Our tea break this afternoon is all about Christine Liggins. Now, she's originally from East Lancashire, but has been living in New Zealand for nearly 20 years. Now, Christine from Hapton started volunteering at a local budget service, giving budget advice. Now, she's massively passionate about helping people manage their debts. Now, in 2020, she was a finalist in the Women of Influence Awards. I won't say any more because I want Christine to do all the talking. How are you doing?
Kia ora, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I know none of the language at all, so you'll have to teach me. But welcome back to Lancashire.
Thank you.
How is it?
Wet.
Yeah.
Wet and cold.
It has been nice.
I heard that.
You don't believe me, do you?
But not this week so far, no.
Yeah. Well, it was nice yesterday. The sun was shining and then the heavens open.
Yes.
So let's wind back the clock. Go back 20 years now. You're an East Lancashire girl.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you moved to New Zealand. Tell me about your life in Hapton first.
Yeah, well, we lived in Hapton all my life, pretty much, and we were just sat there one Christmas and we thought, should we buy a house in Spain or did we actually want to move somewhere to live? And we said, we actually want to move somewhere to live. Couldn't speak Spanish. So it's like, right, so where should we go that speaks English? And New Zealand came up. Never been there before.
Right.
Yeah, never been there before. Packed up our whole house into a container, flew to New Zealand for the first time, landed in Auckland and then thought, oh dear, what have we done?
So hang on, Christine, right? So you decided to go to New Zealand without being there first or
Yes.
seeing the area or seeing the place,
Yes.
the country, and so you just literally packed up and went.
We really did. We really did do that.
Are you
Yes.
nuts?
Yes, I believe so. Yes. Yeah, I've been to Australia. My husband hadn't been to Australia or New Zealand. Australia didn't sit right because I felt he was going there because I'd been there before and I'd got friends there.
Yeah.
New Zealand was neutral to us both, and we just went, yeah, let's just do it, and we
Wow.
did it. Yeah.
What a massive adventure that is. So you got there. Okay, so you got there, your things arrived. And then what do you do in terms of like finding the house to live in?
Well, initially we were living in a hotel for the first couple of weeks. We actually found that we had a cousin, a great cousin or something, a cousin of my dad's. So they connected with us.
Right.
And we managed to stay with them for a week or two. And whilst we were staying with them, we looked for a rental. So found a rental. We were going to rent for at least a year, but it turned out we only rented for about 6 months and then bought a new house, a house for us to live in. And yeah. And luckily, Martin, my husband, had got a job to go to when we got there. We'd made a connection with a joinery firm out there, and he'd got a job and I had to find one. So I found a job, and that's how we started.
So that was around, what, 2003, 2004?
2004. We got married in 2003.
Right.
And we like to do something big each year. So 2004,
that was super big.
emigrated to New Zealand.
Massive move.
Yeah.
But obviously worked out for you and you love it there as well. You mentioned looking for jobs. I mean, what was that like, during that time? Was that quite easy to come across?
It was okay. When I was here, I was a customer service and warehouse manager for 10 years. And then for the final year before we left, I actually ran my own holistic therapy clinic. And when I got there, when I got to New Zealand, I wanted to do something that I'd not done before. But I ended up being a logistics manager. And I was that for a good 3 or 4 years, which was good because that gave us stability in income.
Yeah.
And it gave us, we got to know things about New Zealand because no one tells you how it works.
Yeah.
I remember us going to looking at houses and everyone's going, oh, you've brought British sterling over, you'll be fine. And it's like, we looked at this house and it was a 2 or 3 bedroom house with a pool because that's what we thought we could get. And it was twice as much as we could actually afford.
Right.
So we had to soon change our tastes and downscale, and we got a 2 bedroom house in a lovely area. So it's I think that was the biggest thing everyone said it was cheap to live out there, and it's not.
I was going to ask you about that because you generally, I don't know, there's a program, a daytime program about moving abroad, and New Zealand and Australia. You either stay or you go. Do you know which program I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
And you get to test out a period where.
And we watched a lot of that, and we said we're going to give it at least 2 years before we make that decision. But we were shocked at house prices. Now,
even back then,
even back then, we'd come from. You could buy a terrace over here for about £50,000.
Yeah.
The house we were looking at, you started at £150,000.
Right.
And that was a 2-bed entry-level house, and it's just... And the wages aren't much higher, but... And school, I mean, we don't have school children, kids. You pay for everything with the schools.
Right.
Yeah, so you've got to be prepared for that if you're moving out. I'd recommend it. I mean, I'm not trying to put people off, but do your homework first.
Yeah.
But, you can go to the beach, you can go to parks, and there's so much things for free. It is a better lifestyle, but, we're all being bitten now with the cost of living. It's happening all over the world. But It is a good life. It's usually better weather. We've had a not too good a last 6 months, but it's usually better weather. So, we've lived in Auckland, and the temperature doesn't drop below 5 degrees.
Right.
I got rid of my coats when I went there, so I don't need a coat.
You'd have to bring it back here.
I know I've had to buy one here for this, but yeah, it is a good lifestyle. But if you've got kids, it's a great place to bring them up. But the school costs over there, you've got all the school fees and everything, and house prices are high, rentals are high, but we think it's worth it. We wouldn't change it.
Well, you've been there for nearly 20 years, haven't you?
Now. Actually, yes, 7th, what day is it today?
It is the 10th of July.
So we arrived in New Zealand on the 9th of July, 2004.
So 20 years. Yesterday it was
19 years yesterday.
19 years.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the cost of living crisis, because you just mentioned it there. You are massively passionate about helping people manage their debt.
Yes.
Okay, you've been a finalist in the Women of Influence Awards, which is a really good recognition, very good recognition. How does it compare? I mean, obviously, we're from Lancashire. We talk about the cost of living crisis and how it impacts people here. And, people are struggling across the board. What's it like in New Zealand then? Is it the similar sort of picture?
It is similar sort of picture, and I've spoken to my Australian people as well over there. It's biting everyone. The cost of living, normal groceries have gone up. Your pint of milk, your bread and your eggs. I mean, we've just had... I'm not sure about here. I think you've had the same, but because you've had the bird flu over here with the eggs. We've just had egg shortages over there, which was blamed on a law change or something like that. But the price of eggs rocketed, and it's a staple diet, and yet you can't get it. With the cost of living, the food banks that give free food out, their work's like now 10 times as big. They need to provide food for 10 times more families. It's just... And of course, this year is not only have we been hit with the cost of living, we've had a petrol crisis as well, where all the petrol went up. We could blame some of that on the government, but let's not get political. And this year for us in New Zealand, we've had a cyclone, we've had floods, really major. It's been like third world country, Communities have been washed away. They've got nowhere to live, and that's in New Zealand, which is supposed to be quite a affluent country, so affluent, is that the right word? Not effluent, affluent. So it's hard. It is hard for people. Our beneficiaries, so people on welfare, their wage hasn't gone up very much, and they've got to pay rent still and food still, and it's biting everyone. With the budget services who look after people. And
you work in the budget services, don't you?
I work in that sector. We tend to look after low to medium income earners. And what we're finding is we're getting a lot more medium income earners now asking for help. Everyone's got debt up to their eyeballs. And whilst it was okay or slightly manageable at one point. Now the groceries and petrol has gone up. A lot more people are struggling, and we've now got mortgage interest rates rising, and at the last count I think they said there's 300,000 people coming off fixed rate onto a new higher rate, and now they can't afford the mortgages. So we're getting a lot more people who are new to hardship.
So whatever's happening here is happening there as well.
Yeah, it is. It does seem to be like that. You know, we're watching it carefully about what's happening across the world, and you know, I'm here on a 4-week holiday, but I've got a lot of meetings in London, Leeds and Dublin to meet fellow sort of debt counsellors to see what you guys are doing here, and
that
what
you can take back to
I
there.
can take back, and also what we do there that I can share here as well. So I've got meetings with Step Change, UK Debt Charity, and Money and Pensions and Money Advisory Trust, and those kinds of people. So hoping to share and learn from each other.
We're chatting to Christine Liggins this afternoon. She's our tea break. She's originally from East Lancashire. She's an East Lancashire girl from Hapton, and she's been living in New Zealand. Actually, 19 years yesterday it was, wasn't it?
Yes.
And we've just been chatting about how long the flight is as well. So I'm presuming you do like a 24-hour flight, do you?
Yes, it was a long flight. We came via America this time, so it was 14 hours to Euston, and then Euston to Manchester was 9 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and we lost a suitcase on the way.
Oh.
So if anyone sees a suitcase lying around,
you've still not got
it's
it?
not arrived yet. No.
You'll get it when you're going.
That's right.
It's always the case, right?
Yeah.
That's why you should always pack a spare clothes in your hand luggage.
Yeah,
Is that what you
we did that too. Yeah.
You're pros, aren't you? So, we're talking about obviously how you work in debt, and you're here, and you're going to be having meetings and sharing ideas and stuff like that. And whatever you've said about New Zealand in terms of the cost of living crisis and the issues that they're facing, it kind of mirrors what we're going through here. And I think a lot of people may just think, actually, is it just the UK that's going through this crisis? But that's not the case, though, is it?
No, it's COVID obviously hit everybody around the world, and there was loss of jobs, loss of incomes, reduction in work hours, and all that. That happened globally, and we pushed back with the creditors on that because, you know, there was no point in us helping people get out of debt because the creditors should have been helping at that point, and I think that was global as well. And then the war in Ukraine started, and that has affected everyone, petrol prices and supply prices, and obviously supply prices, just getting container ships around the country, around the world, was hard for everyone as well, you know, so a lot of prices rocketed because of that, and then interest rates have started to rise, and it's just one thing after another, and it's not helping anyone, especially if they're on a low or middle income, and it's across the world, so it is hard for everyone.
You're now back here in Lancashire. You're going to be here for about 4 weeks, aren't you? And then you head back to New Zealand. What's it like being back? Have you still got family here?
Yes. So my parents and my sister are here, and we've got that side of the family. And Martin, my husband's got a daughter here as well. So it's really good to catch up because we haven't seen them for 4 or 5 years because of the pandemic and things like that.
Well, the pandemic was the country was in lockdown, wasn't it? And no one was allowed to come in or leave New Zealand. What was that time like for you then?
That was pretty hard. We'd actually just moved house just before the pandemic, which was really good for us because we now live by the beach. So in lockdown, we could walk along the beach. Yeah. But I think for me, COVID showed us that we could actually do a lot more with technology. Like I used to go fly down to Wellington for meetings. I now have them online. It's more efficient. So there's a lot of that. We actually managed to get out. We were the first flight into Rarotonga after COVID,
right,
which was quite amazing. It took a long time to get through customs because have you had your vaccine? Have you done this? Have you done that? And, you know, and all that. But yeah, that was really hard, and that's hitting New Zealand hard with the employment because our hospitality, a lot of places have had to close down because we relied on people travelling to New Zealand and working in hospitality and places like that. So if anyone's thinking about going on a working visa to New Zealand, please do. We need you. So there's a lot of that. But also when we were in Rarotonga, our lockdown was hurting them because you could only get in to Rarotonga if you flew from New Zealand.
Right.
And you couldn't get into New Zealand if you weren't in New Zealand.
And you couldn't go further, yeah.
And so Rarotonga used to rely on a lot of Pacific Islands like Fiji for their workers. And they couldn't get into Raro because they had to come to New Zealand and we weren't letting anyone in. So unfortunately, we did have a knock-on effect on our Pacific partners as well, which was hard. Things travel-wise are slowly getting back.
Better, yeah.
Yeah, better. So we actually flew to Darwin last year, and when we went to Auckland Airport, it was empty. There was nothing open, and there was like not many people there at all. And this time when we came through Auckland, a lot more was open, and there was a buzz.
It felt a bit more normal,
yeah,
did it?
Yeah. So that really hurt us. What I was hoping for from that period was that communities would start to rebuild. You know, it's like we connected more with our neighbours, and it's like family were connecting with each other because they were baking things instead of buying things because they couldn't go out, and spending a lot of family time together. And I think that was a really good positive that came out of COVID.
Yeah, I think that was across the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
That, communities really, really came together. And you're right, baking was massive.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah,
sharing things and just looking out for each other. Really, you know, it was quite nice to see.
It was sort of back to, I guess, how we used to live, looking out for each other. Yeah. And some of that stayed, which is really good and positive.
Yeah.
Especially now we've got this cost of living crisis, because now we can share food and buy in bulk but share it because it makes it cheaper.
I think bonds were formed, weren't they, in pandemic, and then obviously that crisis never left, but a new crisis came on with the cost of living crisis, and the friendships you formed during COVID, and that kind of extra bond that you formed with your neighbours or, the surrounding area, I think that stayed, and that's what's helping now as well.
And I think so too, yeah. And for us, a lot of Pacific Islanders have already got that community spirit and look out for each other. And I think, the rest of the world can learn something from that and from COVID and take that forward.
Got to mention, you've not got a very strong New Zealand accent, but there is a little bit of a twang coming in. You still kept hold of your Lancashire accent, haven't you?
Well, so the story is that we probably lost quite a lot of it, but then in 2014 we actually opened a UK food shop.
Yeah.
So we were constantly in touch with people from the UK, and I think during that time we slipped back, and then my parents used to come out for 6 months at a time, but it was funny because we videoed the surprise.
So this was a surprise visit for your parents. Oh my word!
Yes.
So go on, tell me about the reaction.
Well, my mother was speechless for 5 minutes, and my dad really didn't know what to do. So in true British fashion, he went and put the kettle on.
Love it.
But when I've shown the video back home, they've said, "Oh, you sound really Kiwi." They sound much more stronger than you. You sound a lot more Kiwi now that you're with them.
Really?
So it's really quite funny. But I slip backwards and forwards depending on who I'm meeting and talking to. Yeah.
Always the case. So what are the future plans now? Then, are you going to continue living in New Zealand? Are you going to ever come back to Lancashire? What are your future plans?
My future plans are to take over the world.
Can I join you?
Yes, save. We've got a lot of plans. So I run Debt Fix, which is a debt solution charity, and we've got a lot of plans to build on that in New Zealand and make it the number one and be the debt solution provider for the country. Yeah. And we're getting a lot of recognition on that, but there's a lot of work to do. Every time, like we're talking to you now about cost of living and all this, there's so much work to do in this space. It's just never ending. So I'll just probably keep on doing
what you're doing,
fighting the good fight. Yeah.
Are you going to go away anywhere whilst you're here? So you're working, but you're kind of holidaying. What are your plans whilst you're in Lancashire?
It's quite controversial with the family, but yes, I have got work. So I've got meetings in Leeds, Dublin and London that I'm flying around the country for. But of course, we couldn't rely on the British weather. So on Saturday, we do fly to Spain to ensure we get some sun.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you, Christine. All
Thank
the
you
best.
very much, Nish.
Thank you so much for coming into the studio, and I hope you enjoy your time in Spain and the rest of your time in Lancashire with your parents and your friends and family as well.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
No,
Thank
not
you.
a problem at all. Christine Liggins there. Originally a East Lancashire girl. She's still got the twang, the Lancashire twang. It comes out every so often. Been living in New Zealand for 19 years now, and she's massively passionate about helping people manage their debts. And in 2020, she was a finalist in the Women of Influence Awards.